is net neutral. And then we get to the quality. Everything we do, roofing is hard. It is, you're out in the elements. You are dealing with things that you didn't expect. We do everything we can, and I'll show you here, to make sure we know what's under that roof. We do not, there's a thing called Eagle View that most roofers use now. And Eagle View is basically a satellite that you pay, and they take an image of the roof, and they give you all the specs on the roof. They can give you the slope of the roof. They can do all this stuff. And so a lot of roofers, like I think you had said, you only have 2 roofers. You probably bid 4 or 5. You only have 2 roofers actually come and walk the roof. We spent hours on this roof. We probably spent more time on this roof than any of you probably have spent up on that roof, looking at that roof. We do everything from looking and understanding what's on it. We look at water content. We do what's called pouring, so that we know exactly what is underneath all the way down to what's called the deck, so that we know what we're getting into. We still sometimes get surprised by things, because when you pull off a roof, you never know what you're going to find. But we do everything we can to make sure that we do have it. Just some of our achievements: we are #1 in roofing in Florida. We are rated #1 in solar in Florida. You can see, most importantly, we have a 0.69 safety EMR. For those of you in manufacturing and that kind of stuff, no, that means we're a pretty safe company. When someone goes to work at Advanced Roofing, chances are they're going home at the end of the day, and that's super important to us. All right, so who knows commercial roofing? Anybody ever spent any time? You do not. So all I know about roofing when I got into this business is that it keeps the elements out and keeps the other stuff in. And that's really, most people, property managers, everybody, that's all they really want to know is it keeping my stuff dry and without getting wind in? And is it keeping my heat and air conditioning in? The truth is, there's a lot to it. And I'm going to teach you just a couple things, because you will hear them. And as you get into looking at the proposals and that kind of stuff, you'll hear this wording and you'll be like, I don't understand what it is. So first of all, the decking. The decking is actually the top of the structural part of the building. The roof, what we refer to as the roof, is not a structural component of the building. The deck that sits on that is structural. That is what everything sits on. And then the roof is actually the small layers that are sitting on top of that. When you talk about roofing to a commercial roofer, we're just talking about that stuff that sits on the deck. It's important for us to know exactly what that deck is, and the slope of that deck, and the pitch of that deck, so we understand how the water is going to run off, how wind's going to blow across, and all that kind of stuff. But when we talk about roofing, we're talking about the layer on top of that deck. And the roof itself is the structure above the deck. Scuppers, leader heads, and downspouts. I know, very sexy words. That's basically the holes in the side of the wall and the way water gets off the roof. You'll hear us talk about it in this instance because permits and things like that have all changed. Roofing guidelines have changed and stuff like that. As you guys know, the amount of rain that we can get now is very different than the amount of rain that we could get 50 years ago at any one time. For those of you, I live in Fort Lauderdale, a high-rise. That April rain, I think, flooded everybody. We never thought we could get that much rain when we did that last April, that flood that we got. So a lot of the building codes have changed since this roof initially went on, and that's the other thing that we do. We make sure that we're up there, we're measuring everything. You can see some of these pictures and that kind of stuff that are up here. Of what we are doing. So I'm going to walk in front because I can see this. So just so you know, so this is a scupper. So that sits on your roof. That's in what's called a parapet wall. That's your parapet wall, and that's a scupper. That's what takes the water from the roof and gets it off the building. You have a certain amount of those. You have, I think, believe it's 6 just about on each roof. You are probably going to need more. These scuppers will not pass building codes today because they're too small and we can't evacuate the water off the roof fast enough. This, by the way, is what's called a core sample. And if you look really closely in here, you can actually see the deck. You guys have on most of your stuff metal decks. So you've got the building built up, and then you've got a metal deck, and then you have what's called lightweight concrete that sits on top of that, and then you've got what we basically burr. It's a it's layers of asphalt and tar and stuff like that. This roof has been re-roofed at one point, because they put a roof on top of the roof. You can do in Florida, you can do 2 roofs on a commercial building. You cannot do any more. And that's why what you guys keep doing is putting silicone and aluminum stuff on the roof that lasts for a couple of years and then starts to crack. It's kind of affected the way the water is draining. You guys do have water, which is not a good thing, between layers of the roof. We don't know exactly how much, but for those of you who walk up on that roof, you can feel how spongy that roof is. No bueno. That is not a good, it's not a good feeling when we're walking up on a roof, and especially when we see bubbles and stuff like that. So there is water intrusion underneath that silicone, and how it got there, we don't know. Speculate. We don't know if they put the silicone when the roof was not dry. In Florida now, we can't even put silicone on or what's called a recover until we have to get a moisture survey to make sure that it's, because years ago they didn't, and this is exactly what happened. What eventually happens, if there's water sitting under there, this lightweight concrete will start to break down. The water is, as you guys know, it breaks everything down eventually. What we have to do when we pull this roof up is we have to do an adhesion test. And that's done by, we have to bring in a third party, and they basically look at that lightweight concrete and they test it and make sure the roof that we're putting on will actually adhere to it and then lift up and blow off. And those are some of those things that are unknowns, as we go through. So sleepers, you guys have these, I don't know if you can see that, but these little sleepers, your air conditioning, you're on sleepers. You guys are on wood sleeper. That will not be code in any stretch of anybody's imagination. A, the wood, and B, it's too low. All of the sleepers now have to be 18 inches. 18 inches?
Yes.
18 inches. This is right.
Above the finished roof.
Above the finished roof. So, and you can see, and I'll show you pictures later on why, because you guys, by the time they built up this roof a couple inches, your electrical and somebody coming off of those things are all sitting in that silicone, and that, again, is not good. And this is just an example of, like I talked about, a parapet wall. So a cricket, by the way, and I'm going to show you a picture later, a cricket is actually just it's a piece of insulation that's angled like this that we cover, and it helps us divert water throughout the roof. Just so you know, when you hear the term, you hear the term cricket, that's what we're talking about. All right, this is your A, B, C, D, E, and then H. Okay, so your roof structure, right now you have a burst system. Again, it's just built up layers of felt and tar. It could have been coal tar back in the day. I suspect it was hot tar, but it ends up looking the same when it's 60 years old, so I don't know what it was. You have line jacks and pitch pans that are all covered with this stuff, and that is not good. You've got these lines here, so that stuff all will get pulled up when we do the roof. One of the things they did do really well on your parapet walls, what we do is on the low parapet walls, we bring the roofing actually up the wall, and then we wrap it over the top, and then we put a cap on it. And that creates no possible water intrusion in that area. What for some reason they did on the higher walls is they just came up about 8 inches, which again is what we would do, but then we would put a counterflow, it's called a counterflashing, on the top of that, and that prevents water from being able to get behind it. They didn't do that. They just, for some reason, brought it up the wall, glued it to the wall, and then painted over it. You have your AC units are on those wooden sleepers. Your exhaust fans are. This is an exhaust fan, by the way, that you have in here. If you get more than 2 inches of water on that roof, collecting on that roof, it's going actually down into that exhaust fan. So some of you are leaking may be coming in from these exhaust fans when you get a lot of rain. Those things are nowhere near code. They need to be up about at least 8 inches off of the floor there. Like I said, your large roofs are lightweight concrete sitting on top of a metal decking. And your small roofs, those little shacks you have up on the roof, that's just a concrete slab, and then your burr is right on top of that. It's it's just through directly through it. So your new roof, this is what your new roof will look like, and your building's gonna be like, this is so much lighter. So this is your metal, your decking, your metal decking, and then this is your lightweight concrete. So we're not doing anything with that, we're keeping all of that. We are stripping it all the way down to that though. So all that other 2-3 inches of material is coming up yet.
The level, what is that?
That's sitting on the structure of the house. Yeah, so it's the man and the structure of it. Yeah, that is a structural part of the building itself. We don't touch that. If we have to get into touching that, we have to talk.
Yeah.
We bring in other people to do that stuff. So yeah, so then you've got this, and you have this. So we're not touching this either. Again, we have to do adhesion and pull tests to make sure that it passes. But then we put in, so we take that, and then we put a brand new primer sealer on it to keep it so it stays if water intrusion does happen. And then we take a foam. It's a very thin foam. It's actually glue. And then on top of that, we put 115 mil pre-stack TPO membrane. So that's what I think Shireen has been passing around. The 115 is the thickest of the TPO. I know you guys are dying to hear this, but there's TPO, and then there's called PVC, and then there's PVC-T. And those are just different gradients of the way the weed actually happens. A TPO, if there's not a lot of people on the roof, a 60 mil TPO will be fine, unless somebody drops something sharp on it. It drags heavy machinery around it. With all the air conditionings on this, we didn't want to go with a 60 mil TPO because we know there'll be people working up there. So if we're going with the TPO, we wanted to do the 115, which is the thickest TPO. The fleece stack just allows for adhesion. There is nothing better at adhering to this deck than a fleece stack. That extra soft back makes it stick.
And it does have a secure uplift system. This, the 150 mil TPO, has 32% additional puncture resistance compared to the TPO, meaning that if it was up there and there's maintenance on the HVAC, which hopefully will be up and we'll be taking care of that very well, you won't have issues of people with uninventory and then scratching that 60 mil TPO. But just so I feel it makes more sense visually, this will get adhered directly on that surface, won't be cleaned up completely. And on the side of the wall, which is called your parapet wall, we do a 1/4 inch dense deck and 60 mil TPO on the sides of the wall.
So that will wrap up the wall. The TPO, and the reason we put the Den's deck going up is to make sure that TPO adheres to the wall for 20 years. We don't want it. So the Den's decks get adhered to the wall, and then we wrap that TPO up the wall.
And he makes a good point. Maybe visually, we would expect to see something more, or something visually
robust.
But the truth is, TPO is 70 or 80% of the roof that we're putting currently in Florida, that would be there. And the way we do it most of the time is with a dense deck gypsum board that we get adhered resistance. The other next best thing will be the 150 mil TPO, cost effective. You get great resistance, weather, heat, temperature. Like I said, 32% more puncture resistance. And the next thing would be a modified bitumen roof. That compared to modified bitumen, the benefit of this one is that modified bitumen, you're going to have to layer it, and you have more seams. On this one, you have about 75% fewer seams. So we just lay out rolls of it as compared to modified bitumen, which is a great system as well. It's similar to a board, which is built up of a barrier, another barrier, and then the modified bitumen. And then the next step will probably be a whole cartridge roof. At the end of the day, they all have 20 years warranty. 20 years on, you have to replace the roof. And we are offering what we think in an expert approach with the best for you. It's not the TPO starting one, it's not the modified bitumen, which is probably, don't quote me on this, maybe 20% more expensive than this. than this one, considering that we have a lot of equipment out there. This is probably true.
And we also put what are called walking paths along the working side, so that walking path. So the walking path goes on the working side, what we refer to as the working side of the air conditioning unit. So any of the workmen that will be up there will be standing on that walking path, so they don't stand up.
Yeah.
So lift the air conditioning itself. So we have to have our,
So what we would do in this situation, and actually, if you don't mind, I wanted to bring the picture back. So we concentrate here. What happens in these types of situations, once we do the new roof, the city comes in and inspects, and if we leave the stands on which the units are standing on, which is only the condensing unit of your air conditioning system, not the air handler, that is not up to code. What happens is that we're basically on a hold more of the structure on which that unit is sitting on, and then we usually the roofer has problem. That's when we come in. What we do in these types of situations is that we have a stand.
Yeah, the site, that's right.
Perfect.
Hey, so there's your old system?
Yes.
And now at the top. And this is what your new system is this isn't the same manufacturer that we use. And that's what it ends up looking like when it's done.
And that's good. And that's up to code. It has to be 18 inches above the finished roof. So as long as the height complies, the distance in between each unit, which is a feet, but you can set up to 5 units in each rack, that's perfect, and that's up to code. Usually in these projects as well, customers take the opportunity to change anything in the condensing unit that's really old and past, and we come in and also offer prices for replacement. Yeah. So yeah, that's basically it.
yeah, they normally say we'll be buying air conditioning, to replace the whole thing.
Correct.
But if what's in the unit is okay.
If your air handler is in good condition, we offer just a condensing unit pricing to replace the condensing unit itself.
And because we're obviously owned by one group of people, the HVAC unit and us work together, and then they put together, and I have some sample pricing for you. And if a bunch of you say, hey, we want to replace our condensers while you're doing this, we've got discounted pricing for you.
My cards and information is right there. Please feel free to take it. Thank you.
Okay, so there are a couple alternates, what we refer to as alternates. So one of them that we're recommending that you guys do is the crickets. These yellow things are the crickets. Because you guys only have scuppers, the water drainage, on one side of all of your buildings. I'm not sure why the architect did that, but he did. And everything is flowing through that area. The amount of water flowing through here is going to be pretty astronomical. And so what we want to do is we want to make sure it's not just hitting the wall and then splashing back. So these crickets are just elevated over a couple inches, and what that does is it helps channel the water right into the scupper.
And highly recommended because you are.
Did I not say highly recommended?
You are currently experiencing quite a lot of funding on that section. And when we went up there, even when it didn't rain that day, there was
still funding.
Maybe a day or 2 weeks.
So again, when I walked up on the roof, I was very honest with these guys, and I'm not being as honest with you guys, but what you have up there, you have water ponding. You guys have, they have literally.
I know the best.
Someone went in and cut into the roofing material to try to keep it from, which is not a bad idea, but it's not ideal, because once you start cutting into that roofing material, you are really degrading the overall effect of that roof and increasing the potential for leak. So we do not like that kind of stuff. We don't like to see that kind of stuff. You have water clearly under the silicone. Any of you can walk up there and bring and see that. I'm pleased that you're saying the insurance company is not mandating a replacement on this roof, but I live in Symphony, right down on Los Olas, and our roof was only 18 years old, and our insurance carrier told us last year we had to replace the roof, but they wouldn't cover us. So then Citizen was going to be our only option, and that was going to be ridiculously expensive. So I feel the pain in this room because I know that this is not something that you want to do, and the fact that you are getting some grace time is awesome for you guys, because they are being sometimes relentless with some of these buildings. So that, we're recommending that, and then, as we're just talking about, you have to do this. This is not an option. You can do it with us, you can do it with somebody